Nurse Maria Volkov had saved 347 soldiers from the edge of death. But on a frozen February morning, as she cradled a dying boy who called her mama, she would make one final choice that would cost her everything. Some angels don't get to fly away. They burn so others can see the light. Maria Volkov's gentle hands, scarred by years of medical service, carefully changed the bandage on a young soldier's shattered leg. These same hands have sutured countless wounds, held dying men as they took their last breaths, and wiped away more tears than she can count. At 42, she's been a field nurse for 18 years, but nothing prepared her for this war. The makeshift hospital in Bakhmut is barely standing, a former school basement converted into a trauma center. The walls shake with each nearby explosion, dust raining from the ceiling like deadly snow. Maria works by the light of battery-powered lamps, her white coat stained with blood that never completely washes out. "Nurse Maria, we need you in surgery," shouts Dr. Petrov, his voice strained with exhaustion. Maria finishes securing the bandage and touches the young soldier's face gently. "Rest now, Dimitro. You're going to make it home." The boy, barely 19, grabs her hand. "Thank you, Mama," he whispers, half delirious with morphine. She's not anyone's mother. Maria never had children of her own. She married young to Alexei, a kind accountant who supported her nursing career. But Alexei died 5 years ago from cancer, leaving her alone in their small Kyiv apartment. When the war started, Maria didn't hesitate. She volunteered immediately, driven by a need to fill the emptiness his death left behind. "Maria, hurry," Dr. Petrov calls again. In the operating room, really just a cleared storage area with surgical lights, a soldier lies on the table, his abdomen torn open by shrapnel. Maria assists Petrov with practiced efficiency, anticipating his needs before he asks. They work in synchronized silence, a dance they've perfected over hundreds of surgeries. "We're losing him," Petrov mutters as the soldier's blood pressure drops. "No, we're not," Maria says firmly, adjusting the IV flow. "Not today." 2 hours later, the soldier stabilizes. Petrov strips off his bloody gloves, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "How do you do it, Maria? How do you stay so strong? Because they need us to be strong. If we break, they have nothing. But the truth is more complex. Maria stays strong because she has to, because the alternative is thinking about Alexei, about the life they planned, about the children they never had. These soldiers have become her purpose, her reason to wake up each morning in this hell." The hospital serves a 15-mile section of the front line. Soldiers call it Angel Station because of Maria. Stories spread through the trenches about the nurse with gentle hands, who never loses a patient she touches, who stays calm under fire, who remembers every soldier's name. Private Yuri, a tank operator who lost his leg last week, tells the new arrivals, "If you get hit, pray they bring you to Angel Station. Nurse Maria will fight death himself to keep you alive." Maria doesn't know about these stories. She just works, 18-hour shifts, sometimes 20, sleeping in a corner when her body finally gives out. She knows every soldier's name, their hometown, their family situation. She writes letters for those who can't, holds phones for video calls home, and sits with the dying so they don't face the darkness alone. Corporal Andrei, 23, recovered enough to return to his unit last month. Before leaving, he hugged Maria tightly. "My mother is in Lviv. If I don't make it, will you tell her? Tell her I wasn't afraid." "You'll tell her yourself," Maria replied, forcing confidence into her voice. Andrei died 3 days later. Maria kept her promise, writing a letter to his mother that took her 4 tries because tears kept blurring the words. The winter of 2024 brings intensified fighting. Russian forces push harder, and casualties multiply. Angel Station receives wounded faster than they can treat them. The basement fills with groaning men, and Maria moves between them like a ghost, doing what she can with dwindling supplies. "We're out of antibiotics," reports Nurse Katerina, Maria's assistant and closest friend here. "Use what we have on the worst cases. The others will have to manage." "Maria, we're running out of everything. Bandages, morphine, even clean water." Then we improvise. We always do. But even Maria's determination can't stretch supplies that don't exist. She begins boiling and reusing bandages, rationing pain medication so severely that some soldiers bite leather straps during treatment. Petrov pulls her aside one evening. "Maria, I've requested evacuation. We need to move the hospital back, maybe to Kramatorsk. We can't hold this position much longer. What about the soldiers at the front? If we leave, where do they go?" "Maria, we can't help anyone if we're dead." She knows he's right, but the thought of abandoning this position feels like betrayal. These men count on Angel Station being here. That night, Maria sits in her corner, writing in the journal she's kept since Alexei died. "Dear Alexei, I think I finally understand why you wanted children so badly. It's not about biology or legacy. It's about having someone to protect, someone who makes you braver than you really are. These boys have become my children. I see your gentle eyes in each of them. I hear your kind voice when they thank me. Maybe this is what you meant when you said love never really dies. February 12, 2024, starts like every other day. Morning artillery exchange. 3 wounded arrive before breakfast. Surgery on a soldier with a punctured lung. Routine horror. Around noon, a massive shelling begins. Not the usual random bombardment, but systematic, methodical destruction. Russian forces are pushing hard, targeting everything. They're breaking through Sector 7, someone shouts. Soldiers begin flooding into Angel Station. Not just wounded, but retreating units seeking cover. The basement fills with desperate, frightened men. We need to evacuate now, Petrov yells over the explosions. Everyone who can move, get to the trucks. Maria helps load the critical patients onto stretchers. The ambulance trucks can only take so many. She does quick triage, choosing who goes and who stays, playing God with men's lives. Nurse Maria, there's no room, the driver shouts. She looks at the basement, still 30 soldiers too wounded to move on their own, and another 20 defending the position. Take these and go. Come back for the others. The road might be cut off by then. Then drive faster. Go. The trucks pull away. Dr. Petrov grabs Maria's arm. You're coming on the next run. Someone needs to stay with them. Maria, Petrov, go with the wounded. They need a doctor. These men need a nurse. We both do what we do best. Petrov stares at her, understanding what she's really saying. You stubborn woman. I'll come back for you. I know you will. But they both know the truth. After Petrov leaves, Maria organizes the remaining staff. 2 nurses, Katerina and young Oksana, and 1 medic, old Stepe. Anyone who wants to leave with the next transport, I understand. No judgment. No one moves. Then we keep working. The shelling intensifies. The building above them partially collapses, blocking one exit. The remaining soldiers fortify the entrances, preparing for the worst. Sergeant Maxim, the ranking soldier present, approaches Maria. Nurse, the situation is critical. Russian forces are 3 blocks away. We should evacuate everyone now. Can you move 30 men with serious wounds, 3 blocks under fire? He's silent. Then we hold this position and pray the trucks come back. But the trucks don't come. The roads are cut. Maria knows this in her heart, but keeps working, keeps hoping, keeps her face calm, so the wounded don't panic. A young soldier, Private Victor, maybe 18, shot through the stomach, grabs her hand. Nurse Maria, am I going to die? She looks at his wound, mortal without immediate surgery, and they have no supplies, no way to operate. Victor, where are you from? Poltava, small village. My mother, she grows sunflowers. Tell me about them. As Victor describes his home, Maria holds his hand, monitoring his fading pulse. He dies mid-sentence, the word yellow on his lips. Katerina finds Maria crying quietly in the corner. 20 minutes later, Maria, you can't save them all. I used to believe I could. Alexei believed I could. Your husband, he always said I had magic in my hands, that I could heal anything. You do. Look how many you've saved. But not this one. Not any of today's. The next wave of wounded comes from their own defensive position. Russian forces are closer now. Maria hears small arms fire above them. Sergeant Maxim returns, blood streaming from a head wound. They're entering the building. We have maybe 10 minutes. Then we fight for 10 minutes, Maria says, suddenly calm. She organizes the evacuation of anyone who can possibly move. Katerina and Oksana help soldiers climb through a damaged wall into an adjacent building. Stepan, the old medic, leads them toward hopefully safer positions. Maria, come on. Katerina shouts, get them out, I'm coming. But she's not coming. Maria looks at the 12 soldiers too wounded to move, men who will die if captured, die if moved, die if left alone. She's made her choice. She sends her staff away, watching them disappear into the smoke and darkness. Then she returns to her patients. Nurse, you should go, whispers Lieutenant Boris, both legs shattered. I'm exactly where I need to be. She distributes the last of the morphine, easing their pain. She holds their hands, tells them stories, sings Ukrainian lullabies her grandmother taught her. She writes final messages from those who can speak, promising to deliver them somehow. The gunfire gets closer. The building shakes. Russian soldiers will be here in minutes. Maria pulls out her journal, writes one last entry. Dear Alexei, I'm coming to see you soon. I'm not afraid. These boys need me for a few more minutes, and then my work here is done. You asked me once what I would die for. Now I know. Not for a country, not for a cause, but simply to not abandon someone who needs me. I think you would understand. Tell God I tried my best. All my love. Always, Maria. She puts the journal in her pocket and continues her work. When Russian soldiers burst into the basement, they find a scene that stops them cold. 12 wounded Ukrainian soldiers and 1 nurse sitting among them, holding a dying boy's hand, singing softly. The Russian commander, Captain Volkov, no relation, hesitates. His orders are clear. Secure the position. Eliminate resistance. But this woman, you're a nurse, he asks in Russian. Maria looks up, switching to Russian. She's fluent. Yes, these men need medical attention. They're enemy combatants. They're patients. Some of them are still teenagers. You should have evacuated and leave them to die alone. What kind of nurse would that make me? Something in her eyes, not fear, not defiance, just absolute certainty, unsettles him. Captain, one of his soldiers says, she's the one they call the White Angel.
There are stories. Volkov makes a decision that will haunt him forever. Give her 30 minutes. Let her finish with the wounded. Then, they withdraw slightly, giving Maria space. She uses those 30 minutes perfectly. She treats wounds, administers the last medication, comforts the frightened. She prepares them as best she can. Lieutenant Boris whispers, "Nurse Maria, thank you for everything. It was my honor." When the 30 minutes end, Captain Volkov returns. "Time is up. My men need this position." Maria stands, facing him calmly. "These wounded need to be evacuated to proper medical facilities. According to Geneva Convention, there are no conventions in this war anymore. Then there should be. Someone has to remember we're all human. I have orders. I know. I'm not asking you to disobey them. I'm asking you to let me do my job until the very end." They stare at each other, two people caught in forces beyond their control. "If you leave now, I'll mark this location as cleared," Volkov offers quietly. "And these men?" He doesn't answer. "Then I stay." What happens next? Volkov will report as resistance encountered, neutralized. But the truth is simpler and more horrible. Maria Volkov, the White Angel of Bakhmut, dies doing exactly what she lived for, standing between her patients and death for as long as humanly possible. The soldiers she stayed with died too, but not alone, not in terror, not abandoned. 3 weeks later, Dr. Petrov receives a package through mysterious channels. Inside, Maria's journal, blood-stained but readable, and a note in Russian. This belonged to Nurse Maria Volkov. She showed courage beyond understanding. "We are soldiers, we follow orders, but some actions haunt us." She deserves to be remembered not as an enemy casualty, but as what she was, a healer who refused to abandon those in her care. She made us remember we're human. A Russian officer who wishes he'd had different orders. Petrov reads Maria's journal through tears. He publishes excerpts, with her last entry shared worldwide. The image of the White Angel becomes a symbol, not of Ukrainian nationalism or Russian aggression, but of the possibility of humanity even in the darkest moments. Katerina survives the war and becomes a nurse educator, teaching Maria's methods and philosophy. She taught us that medicine isn't just about technique, she tells her students. It's about refusing to give up on people, even when everything says you should. In Poltava, Viktor's mother receives Maria's final letter about her son, describing how he spoke of yellow sunflowers as he died. She plants a special section of her field, dedicated to the White Angel. Sergeant Maxim, who escaped that day, writes a book about the siege of Bakhmut. An entire chapter focuses on Angel Station and its remarkable nurse. "She could have lived," he writes. "She chose to matter instead." Years after the war ends, a memorial is built at the site of Angel Station. Not a grand monument, just a simple white stone with Maria's name and the names of the soldiers who died with her, carved into the base. Some angels burn so others can see the light. Captain Volkov, the Russian officer, never speaks publicly about that day, but those who served with him notice he's changed. After the war, he becomes a doctor, specializing in trauma surgery. He never explains why, but sometimes, late at night in the hospital, nurses hear him talking to himself in Ukrainian, a language he wasn't supposed to know. "I'm sorry," he whispers to patients who can't hear him. "I'm sorry." Maria Volkov never had children of her own, but she became mother to hundreds of soldiers who called her mama in their darkest moments. She never sought glory or recognition. She just did her job, day after day, until there were no more days. Her last act wasn't heroic in the traditional sense. She didn't storm enemy lines or sacrifice herself for victory. She simply refused to leave people who needed her, even when leaving was the rational choice. In the end, Maria's story asks us a question. What makes a life meaningful? Is it length, achievement, recognition? Or is it the simple act of showing up for others, even knowing the cost? Maria answered that question with her life. And in doing so, she proved that true courage isn't the absence of fear. It's loving something more than you fear death. The White Angel of Bakhmut died in a basement in February 2024, but her light still guides those who choose healing over harm, compassion over cruelty, presence over self-preservation. And somewhere, in whatever lies beyond, perhaps she reunited with her beloved Alexei. Perhaps he held her gently and whispered, "You see, I told you, you have magic in your hands. You always did."